Beneath, by Joe Mullin. Fear of the unknown is our greatest fear. Joseph Campbell. The headlamp shone on, light passing between the dusty walls of the shaft and into black infinity. Trevor wondered how much longer it would last. The watch on his left wrist, a black G-Shock with a ruggedized band, was pinned too tightly to see, and he couldn't reach the phone in his right pocket. It had been about 5 hours, he thought. 300 minutes, stuck in his stone gullet like a piece of rotting meat. Maybe it had been 6 hours. Or 8. Down here, where the sun could never reach, time was abstract. He remembered buying that watch a year ago. Second-hand, but hardly a scratch on it. Trevor had taken that watch everywhere. Hang gliding over the Grand Canyon at dawn, scuba diving in Belize, it had outlasted everything. Every risk he'd taken. And now, it would outlast him. Someday, probably weeks later, some poor, unsuspecting bastard would find him here, a rotting skeleton in designer rags, and the watch would be right there where it was now, ticking away just the same. The first 2 hours of caving had been excellent. He'd always liked Utah, the dusty, reddish clay, the vast canyons and monoliths that seemed to reach the sky. He'd been through so many caves here, always somewhere new and always alone. Trevor grabbed the nozzle of the Camelback with his teeth, fumbling it into his mouth. The water was warm, with a metallic, mineral taste. He wasn't sure if he was grateful for it or not. He slurped, feeling the water slide down his parched throat. Careful, not too much. He felt his bladder stretching, like a balloon crushed under a weight. He had no idea why that was a concern now, but it was. Somehow, starving to death, smelling of piss was worse than just starving. But you won't starve. No, the water will run out long before that. He hadn't wanted to think that, but he wasn't sure he cared. The first 30 minutes in the shafts hadn't been too bad. At first, it was even wide enough to stretch out. He could put his forearms under his chest and not feel the limestone against his elbows. It had been about 15 minutes before he'd felt the rock scraping against his shoulders, and another 5 after that, his hips. According to the map, the shaft was only supposed to go 100 feet. Assuming a speed of about 200 feet an hour, tight as the space was, he should have been nearly through it already. The cavern loomed ahead, just visible through the opening far in front of him. The headlamp's beam disappeared into a comforting, open space, so wide that the light couldn't reach its walls. Another 5 minutes, and he'd known. He exhaled as far as he could, flattening himself like a mouse to grab any amount of space. Hands in front of him, he pulled against the walls, fingerless gloves gripping the rock. He'd moved another few inches, hands pulling back and squeezing alongside his body in a final bid to pull through what should have been the last few feet of the tunnel, and that was it. The next 15 minutes had been the worst. Panic closed in hard and fast, a crushing, freezing weight. Trevor remembered thrashing and straining, trying for any fraction of movement in any direction. He'd screamed until his voice gave out, and he'd tasted coppery blood in his throat. He'd cried, pleaded, cursed, and none of it had mattered. When it was over, he was wedged even tighter, body scraped and bruised, chest aching for air. Trevor coughed. The sound echoed once, flat and lifeless against the limestone. His throat screamed, vocal cords punishing him. He spat ahead of him, watching the pink spittle for a moment in the light of the headlamp. "Don't go alone," he wheezed. "Caving is a solo team sport." He laughed, without humor. How many times have I heard that before? He'd mapped out the cave, studied the rock types, and the caverns and the underground lakes. He'd purchased new gear and hiking clothes, and he'd ignored everything he knew about cave safety, just as he always did. By the time anyone thought to look for him, assuming they did, he'd be a dried-out husk, gathering dust hundreds of feet underground. He wished he'd taken the cave pack off before he went into the shaft. The drawstring canvas bag felt hot against his shirt, and a puddle of warm sweat had soaked into it. There had been so little left in the bag that taking it off wouldn't have given it more space, so he'd just left it. Just a streamlight pocket flashlight, a lighter, a few batteries, and wrappers from the power bar and gas station sandwich he'd had for lunch. His heart rate had slowed hours ago, back to normal. The quiet was deep enough now that he could almost hear it. The soreness in his arms and legs was mostly gone, replaced by a dull, cramped ache. Bad at first, but fading. It'll be numb soon. There was a sound from somewhere in the darkness ahead. Something splashed in deep water, echoing through the cavern. The headlamp wasn't strong enough to see past the end of the shaft. Some 20 feet away. Whatever it was, it sounded big. No, Trevor muttered. No, no, no. Fragments dredged up in his mind, bits and pieces of stories he'd read long ago. Rabid animals, driven mad in the dark. Translucent fish with no eyes, and teeth like long needles. Mountain lions, stalking prey in near total darkness. Trevor exhaled hard, squeezing every bit of air out of his lungs. He felt his body deflate, just a little. As quietly as possible, he clenched his hands and pushed himself back, using the friction against his arms as leverage. The cramps in his arms and shoulders flared, muscles burning. His body wiggled, but did not move. Trevor grasped for air, sagging in the dust. And then there was another sound, a light scraping somewhere behind him. Trevor held his breath, listening. Just the clothes brushing against the wall. Pant leg, maybe. But there it was again, a whisper in the dust. Trevor froze. Something tickled his ankle, just above his right boot. It moved on his leg, a long, leathery roughness. He felt it go into his pant leg, brushing against the end of his calf. In the silence, his heartbeat sounded as loud as gunshots, going faster and faster. His chest tightened, breath coming in short, quick gasps. He imagined the thing going up his leg, wrapping around his thigh and crotch, going up under his shirt. He gritted his teeth, whimpering. It squirmed again, and something tickled the back of his knee. He could see it in his mind, long and worm-like. It's going to bite. It's going to crawl inside and bite in. Then it was gone, with only another scraping sound to mark its passage. Trevor's head drooped onto the dust, headlamp clinking against the rock. Chest rising and falling in a shuddering, silent gasp. His shirt clung to him through freezing, acrid sweat. His skin crawled with the thought of it, the feeling of leathery hide rubbing against him. A memory hit him, grabbing hold before he could stop it. When he was 10, his older brother Mike had dragged him along the old Halstead house at the outskirts of town. 3 stories of what had once been pristine, whitewashed oak, with an elegant tower room and widow's walk. The Halstead family had lived and died in it for 5 generations before finally leaving it to decay. Now junkies and bums were the only ones who visited, and of course it was haunted, or so every kid in the neighborhood believed. He remembered the rotten floorboards of what was once the dining room giving away under him, the jagged edges of the hole scraping his sides, tearing his t-shirt and shorts, the sharp pain of a rusty nail, like someone had drawn a 6-inch line down his thigh with a red-hot poker. A dark basement, smelling of mold and rot, only one patch of light from the hole above him. He'd landed wrong, all his weight on one thin arm, and he still remembered the sound of bones crunching under him. It was there in his mind, but only in pieces, just images and feelings surfacing in brief red flashes. But the next part was all there, like a movie that he would replay again and again, every night for weeks. Something moved under him, wriggling out through the splintered wreck of the floor. Ropey, leathery bodies writhed under him like the guts of the old house, angry at being disturbed. He screamed and tried to roll, catching himself on the edges of the hole his fall had made in the floor. His broken arm pressed into a jagged floorboard, and he screamed again, the sound tearing out of him. Mike was looking down from the floor above, face white as paper, swearing, "Oh shit, get out of there, get!" There was a hissing, and a sound like someone shaking pebbles in a Pringles can, and something hit his left shoe, knocking it to the side. Later, the EMTs would find 2 pinpricks a half-inch apart and the rubber near the shoe tip. The sounds were louder, closer, all around him, angry and harsh. He rolled as hard as he could, forcing his wiry body out of the hole in the floor. The broken right arm was hot lava underneath him, and he was crying, face sticky with snot and hot tears. Long, leathery bodies slivered over his legs and hips, like cables made of fine sandpaper. A feathery tongue tickled his arm just below his torn shirt sleeve. Something sprang from the edges of the light, and fire burned in his shoulder. "Mike, help me, please, help, it hurts, it hurts, it hurts!" The shaken pebble sound was right next to his head, deafening. When he turned his head, he saw it in the light from the floor above. A long, thin shape like a leather spring, wrapped and coiled. white diamonds running evenly down its back, with a belly the color of old parchment, a slender black tongue flicking in and out, tasting, cold eyes like obsidian marbles, unblinking. Trevor's heartbeat gradually calmed as he slowed his breathing. Breathe in, hold, breathe out, hold, repeat. His chest couldn't expand far enough for a deep breath, but he forced the pace slower. Numbness was settling into his arms, and he flexed his hands, trying to keep the blood flowing. The headlamp's light had begun to fade, more of a warmth than real brightness. It barely made it to the end of the shaft now. He looked around him at the shaft again, taking in the ancient limestone. He hadn't noticed the holes before. Small, only an inch or two wide, worn smooth and round. Countless. Erosion, probably the same water that carved this shaft. Must have taken thousands of years, maybe tens of thousands. He turned his head and looked into one of the holes. It was deep, long, and winding enough that he couldn't see the end of it. Maybe not erosion, more like a trail, like the kind in a worm farm, or the headlamp flickered off and on, alternating the shaft between darkness and a soft, feeble glow. Then it faded and died. Blackness flooded in, submerging him completely. Claustrophobia pressed in from all sides, mounting fast. The air felt thick and hot, like a tasteless soup. Trevor held his breath, trying to get a grip on the cold panic surging in his stomach. The only sound left was his heartbeat, hammering away again in his chest as his breath sped up to rapid machine gun sips. There was a scraping around in the limestone to his left, and another to his right. Something moved overhead, crawling along the ceiling of the shaft and down next to his left shoulder. More sounds accompanied it, light scraping and slithering in the dust and rock, and from all around him, the sound from that long-ago day at the Halstead house. Rattle.